video, When You Turn 66, is the musical celebration of the birthday of a California girl. A 66-year-old California girl. This video is a visual and vocal display of the beauty of life's golden years. Those wonderful years at the end of the rainbow in which employment is history, old age is embraced, and in which the next major milestone is, well, death. How did this particular project unfold? First, a song had to be chosen which would be appropriate for this special occasion. With the birthday count rapidly climbing and now reaching 66, the obvious song choice was Route 66. This tune was chosen, and the lyrics were modified and customized for this particular geriatric birthday. Once this song was rewritten, percussion accompaniment was recorded to provide backup for the guitar and vocals. This percussion recording required the placement and turning on of a digital voice recorder, followed by two hands beating down on one upside-down white plastic bucket in a specific rhythm that repeated exactly 39 times. This drum beat was recorded into the digital voice recorder. The recorded drum beat was then downloaded from the voice recorder to a laptop computer. Once the drum beat was downloaded, it was finally burned onto a CD. This CD was then placed into a portable stereo player and turned on, providing percussion accompaniment for the guitar and vocals, which were recorded into the digital voice recorder with the drum beat playing simultaneously in the background from the portable stereo player. After the vocals and instrumentals were recorded, the video recording followed. The first scene was recorded outdoors. As with all scenes in this project, a tripod was set up. A camera was placed on the tripod. The camera was turned on, and the subject moved into position for the video recording. The first 35 seconds of the original video are silent, as the subject apparently searches for a place to set down the two white plastic buckets. Once the proper place is picked, the subject sets both buckets on the lawn, sits on the bigger white plastic bucket, reaches down and turns on the digital voice recorder, and waits for the drum beat to begin playing on the recorder. While listening to the drum beat on the recorder, the subject beats along with the recording, which is not exactly the same as lip syncing. Rather, it is drum beat syncing, which produces a similar effect, except that it uses two buckets instead of two lips. Once this segment is completed, the subject stops drum beat syncing, stands up, turns off the digital recorder, and walks to the tripod to turn the camera off. The next scene required that the tripod remain in the same position. The subject again turns on the camera and returns to the buckets with guitar and digital voice recorder in hand. As he walks toward the buckets, he turns on the recorder, sits on the bigger bucket, positions his guitar, and waits for the guitar music to play from the recorder. While listening to the guitar chords on the recorder, he plays along with the recording, which is not exactly the same as lip syncing. Rather, it is guitar syncing, which produces a similar effect, except that it uses a guitar instead of a mouth. After guitar syncing a few chords, he stops playing, picks up the recorder and turns it off as he stands up from the bigger bucket and returns to the camera to turn it off as well. The crossfade transition from one scene to the next in the original video gives the illusion that the subject disappears as a drummer and suddenly reappears as a guitar player. The following scene moved the subject from a sitting position to a standing position, with the position of the buckets remaining unchanged. The subject turns on the camera, walks to the buckets while carrying the guitar and recorder, turns on the recorder and places it on the smaller bucket, positions himself for the video recording, then waits for the proper timing of the guitar music as it plays from the recorder. At just the right time, the subject guitar syncs along with the recorded guitar music. When this segment is done, he stops playing the guitar, returns to the camera, and turns it off. The final guitar syncing scene kept the tripod in the same position while moving the subject and the guitar closer to the camera. The subject turns on the camera and then walks in front of it, keeping the guitar close to the camera view. The digital voice recorder is held in the subject's left hand. It is turned on and then placed out of view in the subject's pocket. The subject then adjusts his positioning in front of the camera and waits for the proper timing of the guitar music as it is played from the recorder. At this point, he plays a few more chords along with the recording. Once this segment of the recording is completed, he stops playing the guitar, returns to the camera, and turns it off. With the introductory instrumental scenes now finished, the next scene begins the lip syncing of the pre-recorded vocals. With the tripod and camera properly positioned and with the custom-made baseball cap in plain view, the subject acknowledges the 66-year-old's expertise in the field of aging with these words: "Now that you're a pro at being old." After this line is completed, the subject removes himself from the view of the camera and turns it off. The next scene also uses the crossfade transition, giving the illusion of the subject disappearing from the scene only to suddenly reappear for the next lyric. With the camera and tripod remaining fixed, the subject again walks toward the camera while lip-syncing the next line. "From this mister to his sister, you've been told." Again, the subject completes the line, turns off the camera, and prepares for the next scene. This next scene completes this staging area and introduces a key lyric, a lyric that reveals the title of the song. As in the previous two scenes, the subject approaches the camera while lip-syncing the words, "You get your kicks when you turn 66. He then turns off the camera and moves the tripod toward a picnic table for recording the next three scenes. In this next scene, the subject turns on the camera, walks to the table with the digital voice recorder in hand, turns on the recorder, and places it on the table out of view of the camera. He then verbally acknowledges that this 66-year-old birthday girl is nearing the finish line in her coloring book of life. Now that your life is almost done. With this line now video recorded, he stands up, walks to the camera, and turns it off. Again, using the crossfade transition, the subject repositions himself at another place at the table. After turning on the camera, he takes his place, turns on the voice recorder, and places it inconspicuously beside him on the bench. With foot tapping to the music, he waits to lip-sync the next lyric. Things are better now than when you first begun. He then reaches down to pick up the recorder, turns it off, gets up from the bench, and walks over to the camera to turn it off. One more scene completes the video recording from this particular staging area. After turning on the camera, the subject returns to the table with digital voice recorder in hand, turns it on, and then places it on the table out of view of the camera. While snapping his fingers to the beat, he waits to lip-sync the next lyric. You get your kicks when you turn 66. Once this line is completed, the subject stops snapping his fingers, reaches around to pick up the voice recorder, and turns it off as he approaches the camera to turn it off. This brings the project indoors, where the subject stands against a wall with a picture frame hanging beside him. At this point, the subject gives a short speech, reviewing how the decades have unfolded quite negatively in the life of, really, any 66-year-old. Back when you were 20, silly dreams were plenty, and turning 30 felt downright dirty. 40 was a drag. Everything began to sag. 50 was a bummer. Your memory got dumber. When 60 came along, it seemed so wrong. The numbers inside the picture frame were added later as captions. The caption function allowed the numbers to be written and placed within the picture frame. Different caption transitions were also used, giving the illusion that the decade numbers entered the picture frame in different ways. Once the negativity of the previous 5 decades has been adequately explained, the subject then reveals the positive aspects of turning 66. Specifically, personal freedom and quality time spent with a television are highlighted in the next 2 lines. Again, the subject turns on the camera, steps in front of it, and declares this newfound freedom in the next line. But now you have never been so free. Once this positive truth is declared, the subject returns to the tripod to turn off the camera and to prepare for his next positive statement about turning 66. Placing himself beside a television set with a thrilling episode of SpongeBob SquarePants unfolding on the screen behind him, the subject reveals another benefit of turning 66. Your only duty, Judy, is to watch TV. Having now declared 2 positive facts about turning 66, the subject stands up, turns off the camera, then returns outside to the same picnic table that was used in earlier scenes. This time, motivated by brotherly love, the subject risks physical injury to himself by bravely climbing and standing on the picnic table. After turning on the camera, the subject walks to the table, places the digital voice recorder in an inconspicuous place at the far end of the table, steps from the bench to the top of the table, and waits for the next lyric while grooving to the tune. With a perfectly swaying body, he prepares to deliver the next line. You get your kicks when you turn 66. Once this line is delivered, the swaying stops, the subject picks up the recorder and turns it off while returning to the camera to turn it off. The final stanza for this project was staged at a 4-level parking structure at a hospital. This location was chosen on a weekend because both the stairwell and the 4th-story parking roof provided an area without distraction from any nearby human beings who could potentially gawk at the antics required to complete this video project. The subject walks halfway down a section of stairs, turns on the voice recorder, places it in his right hand, and signals the conclusion of this project by lip-syncing these words. Now it's time for me to zip my lip. After using the universal zip the lip hand gesture, he climbs back up the stairs to the camera and turns it off. Using the same tripod and camera position, the subject steps down to the bottom of this particular flight of stairs and turns on the voice recorder. As he meditates on the word geriatric, he waits for the next line, which he will lip-sync while climbing back up the stairs toward the camera. Holding the voice recorder in his left hand while also using that same hand to steady himself on the rail, he ascends the stairs and lip-syncs. As you take your geriatric trip. By the time the subject completes this line, he is already near the camera at the top of the stairs, where he turns it off and then moves to the roof of the parking structure to complete this video project. Once on the roof, the subject uses a truck as a prop to complete the final chorus of this song. He turns on the voice recorder while approaching the truck and places the recorder on the retracted windshield wiper. As he waits for the recorder to deliver the next line, he begins snapping his fingers to the beat. As the lyrics begin to play, he lip syncs these words. You get your kicks when you turn 66. Once this line ends, the subject begins walking toward the camera, suddenly remembers that he left the voice recorder on the windshield wiper, returns to pick it up, and turns it off as he returns to the camera to turn it off. With the tripod and camera remaining in the same position, the subject turns on the camera and prepares for the next line of the song. This time, he places the voice recorder on the other windshield wiper, then takes a seat on the hood of the truck. As the music plays, he begins snapping his fingers as he waits for the proper timing of the next lyric. He lip syncs the next line. You get your kicks when you turn 66, while actually delivering a kick with his right foot to a nearby section of air. Once this line is done, he picks up the voice recorder and tries to not trip and fall down as he returns to the camera to turn it off. The last line of the song is delivered in the next scene, which, again, maintains the same tripod and camera placement. The subject turns on the camera and, this time, stands in front of the truck. While waiting for the next line to be delivered from the voice recorder, which he holds in his left hand, he snaps the fingers, which are located on his other hand, to the rhythm of the song as he walks toward the camera, lip-syncing the final line of this song. You get your kicks when you turn 66. This scene completes all the lyrics in the song, but does not quite yet complete the project. The final scene in this project is similar to the opening scene, in which the subject performs a drum solo by beating on a white plastic bucket while sitting on a bigger white plastic bucket. After turning on the camera, he walks toward both buckets with digital voice recorder in hand. After turning on the voice recorder, he places it out of view behind the smaller bucket, then takes a seat on the bigger bucket. While listening to the drum beat on the recorder, he beats along with the recording. Once the drum beat syncing is completed, the subject picks up the voice recorder and both buckets and begins to walk away. But first, as a safety precaution, he pauses to look both ways. Once he sees that his path is clear, he continues walking away from the camera. Unlike the original video, however, the subject does not evaporate into thin air while walking away from the camera. Instead, he keeps walking. He keeps walking further away. He keeps walking further and further away. He keeps walking further and further away from the camera. Eventually, the subject gets tired of walking further and further away, and he returns to the camera and turns it off. The illusion of evaporating into thin air while walking away from the camera was created by keeping the tripod and camera in place and recording only the empty roof level of the hospital parking structure without the subject or the two buckets in view. Then, by splicing the walking away scene and cross-fading it into the empty parking roof scene, the subject appears to disappear. This scene concludes this project and this parody of Route 66, which was written by Bobby Troup and made famous by Nat King Cole.
If you ever plan to motor west, travel my way, take the highway, that's the best. Get your kicks on Route 66. It winds from Chicago to LA, more than 2,000 miles all the way. Get your kicks on Route 66. Now you go through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, and Oklahoma City. Look mighty pretty, you'll see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona. Don't forget Winona, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino. Want you to get hip to this timely tip when you make that California trip. Get your kicks on Route 66. Won't you get hip to this timely tip